What's up, guys? It's your man Donovan Sharp, and welcome to this special Saturday edition of TSR Live. Listen, man, let's go ahead and get to the introduction. My guest today is a man who needs no introduction. He, of course, is the great and powerful Andrew Wilson. Andrew, I'm not here to debate you. Whatever you think, I totally agree with.
Okay, that's fair.
Good stuff, guys. Be sure to hit the like button, guys. Be sure to hit the like. So let's go ahead and just get things started here. You're clearly aware of this community, the red pill, et cetera, et cetera. You've been on Fresh and Fit. You make regular appearances on the whatever podcast. How did you find your way to this corner of the internet? Because it really seems like, and I know you've probably been doing this for a while, but it really seems and looks like this is like overnight, all of a sudden you've become like a superstar in this space. So just kind of take me back to where you got started. Who said what said who.
Yeah, well, I got started with online debates during the COVID lockdowns.
Okay.
So I was basically work furloughed for I don't know, like 16 or 18 weeks.
Okay.
And I hate progressives more than essentially anything on planet Earth. I hate them more than mosquitoes. I hate them more than there's just nothing on this planet which I loathe more than a progressive. So I was obviously upset a bit
Sure.
by the fact that they had shut down the entire economic sector in which I worked. And so I began finding kind of ruthlessly online hunting progressives down to debate and kind of go after, and ended up doing some debates on a really tiny little Facebook group show. And then from there, those debates became so popular that little tiny Facebook group decided to have a YouTube channel in which I was a primary appearer in those debates. So I was fairly popular in the debate space already before I ever entered into any of the Manosphere. But I had been debating with Manosphere pickup artists, degenerates of all kind. As you know, there's two kind of divergences from the Manosphere.
Yes.
The left fears them because of what they consider to be the alt-right pipeline, which organizations like Progressive Victory have talked about this in depth. For those of you who don't know, Progressive Victory funded and bought out all of Twitch politics. They began to pay creators to run propaganda on their behalf. Now, if you listen to the mission statement from the organizer of Progressive Victory, he explains that Red Pill Manosphere content creation is an alt-right pipeline. And because it's an alt-right pipeline, he instructed these leftists to specifically attack the Manosphere. And they do. That's what they do all the time. That's one of the primary things they do. However, there's a distinction where there's another side of the Manosphere which is elevated, and this is through pickup artists and the degenerate side, which I would say is actually a larger side of the Manosphere grift than what you would consider to be the true red pill side.
Okay.
So those guys get elevated, okay, and their messaging is pure and sheer degeneracy and scumbaggery, and it's all about humping as many women as possible and essentially the destruction of the family unit. So I had been already tangling with these idiots for a good year and decimating them. Now, I did some debates with guys who are a lot more akin to my ideology. So, for instance, I don't agree with everything Myron says, and I'm happy to take his ideology on the parts of it that I disagree with. Same thing with Brian Atlas and guys like this. The idea here is that I think I'm right, and I think my ideology is the correct one, and so I'm willing to defend it kind of tooth and nail against people who are challengers to it, specifically the degenerate element. So how I found myself in the I guess quote unquote manosphere is because I'm just as likely to eviscerate and wreck one of the degenerate manosphere scumbags as I am one of the progressive left-wing scumbags, just as likely.
Okay, very good. Now, what in your opinion, what do you think? Because you talked about the manosphere being, having two divergence. There's I guess the scumbag side, if I understand that correctly.
Yeah, I can associate that better if you want.
Okay, yeah, that makes well. What do you think is I guess, what is the difference in your opinion between the good side and the bad side of the
Can I
manosphere?
ask you a
Because obviously
question?
we get a lot. Yeah, sure.
Are you on a laptop right now?
I actually I'm on my iPad. I had to
You're on your
hucklebutt.
iPad.
Look, I had to hucklebutt this thing together because I totally forgot everything at home. I'm actually on the road in Vegas right now. So yeah,
Okay, gotcha,
yeah,
gotcha.
yeah, yeah,
Because the
yeah. Yeah,
audio's a
this is
little
not.
bit,
Yeah,
audio's
this
a
is
little
not my
low.
normal setup. Yeah,
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is
So
no. Yeah. So
okay,
this
so
is.
no problem, no problem. But can you go ahead and repeat the question for me?
Yeah, sure. What do you think is the difference between, I guess, the good side and the bad side of the manosphere?
It's the value. It's the prescriptive element. So
Okay.
the manosphere, the red pill itself is I liken it to a data packet. So it's a ton of descriptive claims. The claim can be as basic as women like men who are taller than them, all the way up to descriptive like dark triad traits or
Right.
other descriptive things which go into this data packet. Now, not all of them are true.
Sure.
And Evo Psych would go into this kind of data packet as well. Now, there's enough true claims which are in the red pill data packet that you can do a lot of damage with it, or you can do a lot of good with it, right?
Right.
But it's all descriptive, none of it's prescriptive. The problem is that a lot of people pick up this data packet and decide that they're going to use it for necessary societal evil. They use it to do things like promote OF, promote degeneracy,
Right.
promote promiscuity, promote all sorts of things which are antithetical to Christian ethics. And so, again, those people I consider to be bad actors, and their ideology needs to be destroyed just as bad as progressive leftist ideology needs to be
Okay.
destroyed.
Wow. So that is a very distinct difference there. We've already got super chats coming in. Dr. B84 with the $50 super chat says W collab. Moist Fista with the $5 super chat says salute to the both of you, banger of a collab. So the first question I'm going to ask from my Discord is actually a pretty thought provoking one. It's from Great Sphincter, interesting name. It says Leviticus 21:14 says, quote, he must not marry a widow, a divorced woman, or a woman defiled by prostitution, but only a virgin from his own people. His
Mhm.
question is, how do we honor this in the current year with the existence of the aforementioned OnlyFans and women being encouraged to be promiscuous? And please pardon me, because like I told you off the air, this is the first time I've been nervous on a podcast in a while, so please forgive me. He says, OnlyFans is prostitution, no two ways about it. I guess this applies to passport bros as well, who are marrying people from completely different cultures. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, Levitical law has nothing to do with Christian ethics. That was a foundational law which was designed specifically for a Jewish people group of the time.
Okay.
So this is not, Christians don't follow Levitical law, and we never have followed Levitical law.
Okay.
So we don't do animal sacrifices. We don't do, we don't do those kinds of offerings. We wear, mixed cloth garments and all sorts of different things. So we don't actually follow Levitical law. So that's
Okay.
one.
Okay.
Two, within the confines of Christian ethics, the prescriptors for these things are going to somewhat be dependent upon culture. Should you attempt, I think, to marry someone who's a virgin and keep yourself chaste? Yes, yes, you should. However, it's not a requirement in Christian ethics that you do so. It's not a requirement, in other words, that if you get married to somebody who's not a virgin, that somehow this is a sinful union or something like this. The whole point of Christianity is redemption and salvation through Jesus Christ. So many people find salvation after doing various bad things in their life,
Right.
and they're able to reconcile those bad things and go on to live very, very good lives, in the faith. So this is allowable. It's just not preferable. It's not societally preferable. So as much of this behavior as we can try to run out of it, the better society ultimately will be, the closer you get to following the law of Jesus Christ in Christian ethics.
And just to get personal here, I am not. I'm no longer the most religious person in the world. I don't think I'm agnostic. I don't think I'm an atheist, because I believe that at some point up the, I guess, chain of creation, there has to be an uncaused cause, and that uncaused cause is what we call a deity. Talk to my audience, and really me, talk to my audience about guys like me who have sort of lost their faith in Christianity, because I've wanted more than anything to feel the way I used to feel about the Holy Spirit and God and the Bible, and it's almost like I've lost my way. So what would you tell to a guy like me who maybe happens to walk into your church and says, "Hey man, like I've been down that road, I've been Catholic, I've been Baptist, and I kind of, I kind of don't know where to go here."
You were a Catholic?
Yeah, I
You
was.
were raised in the Catholic Church, baptized?
No, I was raised in the Baptist church, baptized in the Baptist church. Then I decided to become Catholic, and then was baptized in the Catholic church.
Okay,
So
and then
that
you just
explains a lot.
left it all together.
Yeah, and a lot of the reasons why I left the Catholic Church altogether, and I guess I should follow my own advice here. You have to really separate the art from the artist. Like, we all know that Michael Jackson was more than likely a PDF file, but he's still one of the greatest performers ever, in my opinion. So I can separate that. But one of my main reasons was the stuff going on, with priests and their altar boys, if you know what I'm getting at. And like many people, it really put a sour taste in my mouth, in terms of just the whole idea of following God and this and that and the third. And so, like I said, I've been looking for something to sort of reignite my religious, my desire to be a part of a religious organization.
Why do you think? Why do you think in public schools that the amount of children who are SA'd is
Hmm.
significantly higher than the amount of children who get SA'd in a church?
No, why?
Do you know why?
No, I don't actually.
It's
No.
because predators go where the kids are. And so the thing is that it doesn't really matter what the venue is or the avenue is. You're going to find a large amount of predators who work in group homes. You're going to find
Okay.
a large amount of predators who work in schools. You're going to find a large amount of predators who are inside of various churches. The thing is that's interesting here is that inside the public works sector, in anything in regards to children, the predatory nature of the workers is significantly higher than they are inside of these religious groups. The
Right.
reason is actually because the religious groups do more to try to govern them out and pay more attention to that than the public sector secular groups do. So the Catholic Church got a pretty bad rap, right? But the Catholic Church is this
Yeah.
global organization. It's massive. It's huge. It's a giant, massive machine with billions of people who are involved in it, with a large amount of clergy. So there's going to be some of that's happening, right? And there's even going to be some sects of it who enter into cover-ups, but it'll never be as bad as what you find in the private sector ever.
Okay.
So when people kind of lean away from church life and say, but it's because of the awful things which happen inside of this church or in this church, I just like to point out that the rates of this are significantly lower than you would find in other areas where children are present.
Makes
So
sense.
I think it's actually a really bad idea to lean away from the organization which does more to try to curtail that
Sure.
than you would find in secular organizations, right? So
Yeah.
the idea here being this behavior I don't like and I want to see it curtailed. Well, why would you then move away from a group that tries to curtail it when the other group that you move to does less to curtail it? You see
Sure.
what I'm saying?
No, no, that makes perfect sense. It's almost like my wife and I, we watched this show on Netflix. It's called The Lincoln Lawyer. Very, very good show. I would highly recommend it. And I remember one of the characters was talking to the guy who's the Lincoln Lawyer. He says, the worst kind of criminal is a criminal with a badge. And so me losing faith in law enforcement, it's almost like the reason why I lost faith in the Catholic Church is the same reason I would lose faith in law enforcement. Well, there are so many dirty cops. Well, just like you said, dirty cops they're not really cops. They're just criminals with a badge. And I think the comparison that you made is that if it was going to happen anywhere, just like you said, they go where the kids are. Criminals go where the crime is.
Yeah.
Predators go where the kids are. And if
Well, like
kids happen to be-
one guy just said, in fact, he said, well, yeah, but that's because there's more kids in public school. No, we're talking about per capita. Per
Okay.
capita, there's less of this. In fact, I have some studies that reach as high as 50 times higher inside of public school systems
Wow.
and public institutions. So, like, let me give you some other examples of this.
Okay.
If you are an abusive parent, if you come from an abusive home, your father and your mother are physically abusive to you, your chances of actually being killed outside in a group home after you were removed from your abusive parents are actually higher than if they left you with your abusive parents.
Wow. Jesus Christ.
This is the conundrum which we find ourselves in, where the state itself is not very apt because they use psychological methodology instead of intuitive parenting, and they don't have the pair bond with the children that parents do.
Okay.
You end up with this same kind of issue, all over the place in any public institution. That's the case.
Wow. Good Lord, man. Now I understand why you've got. You ever heard of Super Hot Fire?
No.
He's a quote unquote battle rapper. His record is like 386,000 and L. Ghost 1978 wants to know. He says, ask Andrew why he chose Orthodox.
Well, so I found religion through logic before I found faith. So the thing is there's many different ways that people come to the path. The path is very narrow, but as you're instructed by Jesus Christ, knock and the door will be open to you. So what he's saying is, if you go looking for answers, you're going to find them, and you're never going to have to look very far, right? Okay. You're never going to have to look very far to find them, because the truth's written on your heart anyway. So the thing is for me, what you just gave, that's called the first mover argument, the uncaused cause, right? The unmoved mover.
Right.
That's referred to as the first mover argument, but it has some problems, because a secularist can say, okay, well, whatever this timeless being is, I think it's a spaghetti monster. Why would that make it the Christian God, right?
Right.
So there's some issues with the first mover argument, but there's far less issues with combination arguments. So you get to that with inductive reasoning, but then we can use logic to look at the impossibility to the contrary. The impossibility to the contrary, meaning if we take into account the transcendentals which exist, the laws of logic, and the metaphysical truths which you can't escape, laws of logic come in three. The three laws of logic is you have the law of identity, the law of excluded middle, and the law of non-contradiction.
Okay.
These are metaphysical truths that don't exist anywhere except in the mind, and yet they actually have to be real. There's no way around them. We can't even have discourse without them. We can't even function without them. So this implies that there's a mind, and if it implies there's a mind, and we already know that there has to be a cause, we've inductively figured out that there has to be a cause, and now we have a mind that has to go with the cause. So then we can look at some other metaphysical truths, like, would this cause have to be infinite? Well, it would. It would have to be timeless. It would have to be all-powerful, because it was uncreated and created itself. So all logical roads, even from the Platonic forms, and the idea of Socrates and Plato, which led to these Platonic forms. Orthodoxy, you could even say, has a lot of Platonic influence in it. And though we're not Platonists by any means, but you can come to this logically first, and then after you come to it logically, faith tends to come with it.
Holy God, good Lord, man. I think this conversation is way above my pay grade. And we're going to jump around with questions here because they're not in any particular order. Siege D in my Discord says, how does one get experience dealing with women and find a marriageable woman without becoming a degenerate? That's actually a very good question.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Can you repeat it for me? You're just a little quiet, dude. Sorry.
Oh yeah, sorry about that. And that is not a complaint that I have ever gotten. I am as loud as they come. He wants to know. He says, how does one get experience dealing with women and finding a marriageable woman without becoming a degenerate?
Yeah, that's actually the answer is in the question. Like, why is there a requirement that you have to fuck women that you go on dates with? Why is that? Like, why is it a requirement that you need to sleep with them? Why is it a requirement you need to have sex with them? Why is it even a requirement you need to make out with them on the couch? Why do you think that it's impossible for men to have experience with women and understand female nature and things like this absent intercourse? That's the least compelling part of a relationship with a woman. It's literally the least compelling, most base part of this interpersonal dynamic. So sex is a weapon that is used by women, not by men. You understanding their nature is not a requirement that you stick your penis in their vagina. There's no such requirement that exists. And by the way, there's tons of virgins who are out there, virgin men, who understand intersexual dynamics just fine. These are logical assessments and experience-based and intuitive assessments that in no way, shape, or form require you to wet your willy. Like, why do you have to do that?
No, I mean, I hadn't even thought of it from that perspective. You could experience you really could get a lot of experience with women without having sex with them and still understand female nature. That had until just, and I don't know, maybe I'm a dumbass, but until now it had never occurred to me that's how did you describe it? You said sex is the least what part of the
that's the least important and most base part of the relationship, meaning not based, but base, like it's rudimentary.
Sure,
right?
Sure.
The idea is this, that you could walk over to a complete stranger, female who's a complete stranger to you, pull down your pants and have sex with her, and she can have sex with you, right?
Right.
This requires no knowledge of interpersonal dynamics at all, right? It's just totally rude. It's totally rudimentary, right? Yeah. And so the thing is like, I don't really understand what it has to do with intersexual dynamic. No idea what it has to do with that. What it is I think people cope, right? They want to fuck these women. Yeah. And so they make these claims. They say, well, how can I really understand how women operate? If it's like, you can understand it fine. Your logic, your reason, your intuition, and your inductive reasoning skills don't go away because you can't control your heart on.
You know, it's interesting. Now, one would argue, well, the reason why we have to have sex with these women is because it is intersexual dynamics. And at this point, I would argue that that sex, the root word, I don't think it's talking about the actual intercourse. I think it's talking about the two sexes. So when it says intersexual dynamics, it's talking about the two sexes, male and female. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is that too often what people do is they reduce everything to intercourse. Yeah. And the thing is, it's really funny about it is like when you're married and you basically have intercourse at your will, your beck and your call, right? Right. You find out that it's the least important kind of metric when it comes to the assessment in your marriage, unless it's absent. Then it becomes very important. But if it's there, right, every other problem becomes paramount, and you realize that things like loyalty and this type of thing are going to take precedent over everything else. So I think ultimately you have a big problem with the idea that you cannot gain experience with women without having sex with them. It just seems absurd to me.
Okay. All right. Wow. Great answer, man. Jesus Christ. Andrew's black ex-wife with the $50 super chat says, ask Andrew why logic proves God, given the illogical nature of reality, such as how photons can be waves and particles which are opposites, breaking the law of non-contradiction. Quantum physics is illogical, but real.
It's really funny that you say that. So you're talking about the double slit experiment. Yes. And people get this wrong all the time. They think that observation is what create the waves, but these experiments have been done multiple times since then, and it's not actually the observation which creates the waves. It's just the way that the photons interact with the slits. So the interesting part here is that people will take a kind of cursory scientific experiment, and science is only as good as its controls. It's only ever going to be as good as its controls. And so you do a controlled experiment and you can get distinct and different results, which you did in the double slit experiment, which why it was inconclusive and more scientific data needed to be done. However, when you slap quantum in the name of something, right, suddenly you can talk about all sorts of shit that defy the laws of logic and the laws of what we consider to be physical truths like gravity, things like this. But there's not a lot of great proofs for these things.
Okay.
So what you're talking about is a pseudo scientific endeavor. But let's assume for a second, let's just grant it, right? Because it's no fun to just refute an argument. You need to grant the argument and then destroy it twice. Otherwise, where's the fun there? So we'll just grant that this is true. Well, if it is true and things only operate under the eye of observation at the photon level, that would give you evidence for metaphysical truths, which would actually be more of a proof for a metaphysical being than it would be for a complete physical reality, which would give more proofs to the laws of logic being something which are tangible and real and not just a product of the mind.
Holy shit, man. Holy God, man. Jesus Christ. Wow. I was not ready for that. I was not ready for that answer. Siege D on Discord says, does Andrew know the divorce rate in the Orthodox Christian Church?
I don't know it off the top of my head, no, but it's low. It's quite low for so this is the case with all denominations. So here's how it works.
Okay.
The divorce rate with Protestant Christians particularly is high, but that's because the self-identification of Protestant Christians is high. So meaning most
Sure.
people,
Yeah.
their default setting is that they will self-identify as being a Christian. But you have to look into the data a little bit more. And this is probably a reference to Pew Research. They're the ones who give out most of the data on
Yeah.
these various surveys, things like this, though he could have another source. But either way, the source is going to say this. The more religious a couple is, meaning the more they practice their religion, they go to church, they're participating in the community, they participate in the sacraments. In other words, religion is actually a very meaningful and constructive part of their life.
Right.
You'll find that their divorce rates are in some cases only 5 to 10% in comparison to the rest of the general population.
Wow.
That is the case with Protestants. That is the case with Catholics. That is the case with Orthodox. That is the case with all of the divorce rates when it comes to religion. Remember that self-ID, they try to use the no true Scotsman argument. Well, you can just say somebody's not a Christian. But the thing is there is actual criteria for being a Christian, which is following Christian ethics and the ideals of Jesus Christ. And you would say, and I think I would say, and everybody would say, that community participation inside of your church and things like this and following those doctrines is definitely a part of Christianity. It can't just be self-ID or it has no meaning.
Ken Rose with the $5 super chat. I don't have the Don DeMarco button. Let me shift gears here just for a second, if you will. So you've recently become your notoriety, speaks for itself. I've been in this space now, good Lord, going on 10 years. And of course, the bigger you get, the more criticism, the more hate you get, et cetera, et cetera. How does Andrew Wilson handle criticism?
Fuck him.
And this is just guys talking. Just how do you handle criticism?
Fuck them. That's how I handle it.
Okay.
Fuck them. And I like to drag critics up and pummel them. So the thing is like, I've at every creator anywhere online, I think that other than Destiny, I am the most likely to engage directly with critics and debate them on their ideas versus mine and their criticisms versus mine. But people don't really have much that they can say, right? Like the Crucible does big giveaways. We actually give it all away. The Crucible sells tons of merchandise. You always get your merchandise. The Crucible sells different things. You always get what we say you're going to get. There's never ever. In other words, you'd have to kind of run out the victims. Like, where are the victims? Where are the people who've been victimized? Where are the people who have had the problems that have been unaddressed? And if they do have problems that are unaddressed and they're legitimate grievances, why not just go ahead and fix them then? If there's a problem, you know what I mean? Or an oversight or a fuck up or something like that. I'm only human, right? So how about we just go ahead and fix it, right? Whatever the grievance is. And so in many ways, it takes the power away from your haters, right? Because most of the things that people say online about other personalities is rooted in two causes. The first cause, of course, is jealousy.
Yes.
And that's a big one. And then the second cause is rooted in ignorance. They just don't know what they don't know. They saw a couple of clips or something like this. They don't really understand your content. They don't really understand what it is that you're talking about, things like that. So in both cases, you can cure both of these problems. The way that you cure the first problem of jealousy is by laughing at them and kind of rubbing it in their face. And that drives them insane and makes me happy. But the second way, when it's just ignorance, is you just have a conversation and you elucidate the ignorance, and that usually takes away the problem as well. Now, that's not to say that there's not going to be some people who are lunatics, because there's going to be.
Yes,
by the way, according to Pew Research Center, the divorce rate among Christians in the United States is around 9%.
Wow. Holy shit. I did not know that. Why?
Yeah, my wife just sent that over.
Yeah, why does everybody think it's 50%?
Well, they're talking about Protestant sex.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And is there a different now this is my religious ignorance. Is there a difference because I think that, as far as I know, there's Catholicism and everything else is Protestantism. So is Orthodox Christianity, is that different from Protestant, or is it under that same umbrella?
The first schism happened between the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church.
Absolutely right.
The second schism happened between the second schism was a Catholic schism for Protestants. Okay. Martin Luther did the second schism. The first schism, the Orthodox claim the Catholics broke off from them. The Catholics claim the opposite. So the Orthodox Church is the oldest Church of Christ it's the original Church of Jesus Christ.
Okay, very good. Gordzilla 37 with the $5 Canadian super chat. Wait, Canadian? I'm an idiot. Says, Andrew, have you ever heard of Ibel? I heard we all should hail Ibel. I have no idea what.
We all should hail Ibel, yes.
Okay, what is that? Is that I mean, forgive my ignorance here.
We don't talk about Ibel.
Oh, okay. We do.
You hail Ibel. You don't speak about Ibel. You just hail Ibel.
Fair enough. Fair enough. The common denominator of every personality in this space is that we are all anti-feminist. We understand that feminism. I believe that feminism is the worst thing to happen in the history in the history of mankind. I think it's destroyed families, it's destroyed men, it's destroyed women, and most of all, it's destroyed children. Give me your elevator pitch on what you think of feminism, and is it ever going to be complete? Is it ever going to go the other way? Because right now it doesn't seem like it is. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, what is feminism?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
To me, feminism has, I think, a few different pillars. I think one of the pillars of feminism, and I think Rollo talks about this a lot, is giving men all of the responsibility while simultaneously taking their authority and doing the opposite for women. I think that feminism, at first, I guess first wave feminism, I think it sought to give women a choice. If you don't want to be at home, raising kids, you can now go into the workforce. But now it's been bastardized and it's evolved in so many different ways that it is quite literally a hate group, and nobody's winning. That's the way I see it. I think that feminism, is the worst thing to happen in human history. That's what I think.
So first wave feminism, the idea of seeking to give a woman a choice, do you think that was good, that we should have given women a choice?
In hindsight, clearly not.
In hindsight, clearly not. So would you take their choice away now?
Oh, God, I don't think we could.
But if you could.
Good Lord, man. I guess not. Because I don't know. Maybe I'm
so then you're a feminist.
Oh, okay. All right.
Right. Well, I mean, that would be the entailment, wouldn't it? So if the idea is feminism's awful, first wave feminism sought to give women a choice. It's like, okay,
we saw
well, that's the root. Well, that's the root. So then if we have the root and I ask you, well, right now, if you could, would you take the choice? You say no, then you would be rooted in first wave feminism, right?
Okay. Yeah. What do you think feminism is?
Feminism is very simple. It's all feminism is a dismantling of patriarchal systems, and that's it.
Okay.
It's just a dismantling of patriarchal systems. So the idea here, well, in the furtherance of egalitarian systems.
Okay.
So the idea here is that to be oppressed, there must be an oppressor. So if there must be an oppressor, and feminists are oppressed, who are women oppressed by? Well, there's only one other sex, so it must be men. So if the other sex is men, right, then men must be the oppressors. So in this case, they're pointing to that and saying that is patriarchy. And since men are in charge of all the systems, those systems are necessarily patriarchal. These patriarchal systems must be dismantled for the purpose of egalitarianism, meaning that women need to be at the same level as men when it comes to responsibility and authority and all of this type of stuff.
Oh my God, yeah, no way. And it's interesting because I remember watching you, I think on the Whatever podcast, or it was, I think you were debating with one woman who said that she was all about bring back the patriarchy and this and that and the other, and you literally systematically dismantled her, really exposed her as sort of a card-carrying feminist. And I think you were also in a debate one time about allowing women to vote. And I was always of the mind, okay, I'm not going to be this repeal the 19th Amendment guy because there's no way that's going to happen. Blah, 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 blah. Women should be able to vote, da, 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 da. But the way you explained it, and I forgot how you explained it, but the way you broke it down, like piece by piece, it's like you asked the woman, do you think women should vote? And she says, well, yes. And so I think you said, okay, well, giving women the right to vote
it almost certainly supersedes, you know, male authority in our electoral systems, you know, with our elections and things of that nature. And so now I don't think women should vote. I used to be of the mind that, hey, you can't really take away their voting privileges, but the way you explained it, and I'm not smart enough to remember and regurgitate this stuff, the way you explained, the way you took them around, and could you explain that just for my audience and mainly me, why?
I think the woman that you're referencing for this particular debate, there was a micro debate which happened on whatever, was between me and a woman named Deborah. And
yes,
she was
yes.
She was a TPUSA girl. So
oh God, yes.
in this particular debate, we were discussing patriarchy and the idea of responsibility absent authority. And so what I asked her is, if it is true that you reject or that you hecking love the patriarchy, right? Then why is it that you would want the responsibility of voting instead of the patriarchy having the responsibility of voting? Because if that is the case, that I hecking heart the patriarchy, and I hecking want to stay home and hecking cook sourdough starters and do my nails while men have all the responsibility,
right?
Then why is it that you're demanding that women have equal responsibility? And her answer to this was to say, well, because men aren't to be trusted with authority, and since they're not to be, and so because there's so many soy men who can't be trusted with authority, women necessarily need to have authority, which actually means that she does not support the patriarchy at all and was lying, right? So the thing is that's a consequence of the position.
Why do you think there are so many? Because a good friend of mine, Pearl Davis, I'm sure you know who she is. She really hates female tradcons, because female tradcons, they share, I think they're undercover feminists. Why do you think so many women come out and they say, well, I'm pro patriarchy, when they really are just sort of feminists in disguise? Is it because they want the attention, they want the notoriety? In your opinion, like, why are there so many, and they're usually pretty attractive, the Lauren Shens of the world, et cetera, et cetera. Why do these women exist?
They make a simple category error. And the category error is they conflate feminism with woke. They think that woke is the same as feminist, and it's not. Woke ideology is rooted in progressive idealism, and it's based around the various ideas that subtle shifts in language and behavior can create intersectional dynamics of power, which are problematic. Right. And so they take offense on behalf of the people who aren't even offended, in order to, in some way, right these kind of interpersonal wrongs which only exist in their head. So this is woke ideology. It's intersectionalism, which is it's based around kind of the subtle and intuitive microaggressions and things like this that they perceive as happening in society between various power dynamics within groups, right? Within racial groups, sexual groups, LGBTQ, preference groups, right? All of this. That's woke. And so those people are unhinged, because if you start to look for every single type of power dynamic, which is off, right, then you're never going to see anything but power dynamics, which some people have power over others in every single group.
Sure, right.
Because that's a necessary condition to being alive. A necessary condition to being alive is that in order for me to thrive, there's necessarily going to be some people who have a necessary amount of power over me inside of a society, given a certain situation. This could be police officers, perhaps the tax man, perhaps state officials, things like this, or perhaps somebody's boyfriend who I really pissed off when I tried to grab his girl's ass. Right now, he has a bit of power over me.
Right.
Or perhaps another group who we don't want involved in a church, and now we're in the power domain, and so this is discriminatory. So anyway, if you start looking for that, you'll find it, and you become unhinged. So once that happens, you become one of those sky screaming lunatics. Now, feminism is a part of wokeism, meaning there's no woke women who aren't also feminists.
Right.
However, that does not mean a feminist needs to be woke, and they conflate the two. So they don't realize that they themselves are feminists. They're just not woke feminists. They're not looking for those power dynamics being off in every single situation. They just haven't thought of the entailment of their position, that feminism is not just the idea of, well, I hate men and scream at the sky because, I heckin' heart, the intersectionalism. That's not feminism. It has nothing to do with feminist theory at all.
Okay, very good. Man, I think we are all getting smarter here. Manny Fresh with the $10 super chat says, in my opinion, feminism is simply neo-Marxism. Agree or disagree?
Yeah, I think that Marxism promotes feminism,
Okay.
but feminism itself is something that you can even say came out of Marxism. So Marxists did push feminism quite a bit, but
Sure.
really what pushed it over the top in the United States was the occults, which came out of Protestant sects. Those were the people who really ended up pushing. They were the original architects and authors of feminism. Though I do agree that that neo-Marxism is now part and parcel of what feminism is, and there's a lot of overlap between the
Yes.
ideologies,
Yeah.
particularly when it becomes egalitarianism and people are interchangeable widgets. But feminism, in many ways, is even more invasive because the system itself is always elusive. It's based around power dynamics nobody can even do anything about. Within Marxism, you might be able to do something with financial power dynamics. Like
Right.
if you make $500 and I make 200, right? I can take X amount of your 500, and now we have an equal amount of money. So, so even if that's a really bad idea, we can still at least do that, right? So that's
Sure.
something we
Right.
can do. You can't do the types of things which would be necessary to create egalitarianism between men and women because you have strength differentials and you have
Yes.
different ways of thinking and you have
Yes.
different, like you're not interchangeable with them. So you can't even really do anything about it. Feminists have recognized this problem of compatibility even within Marxism and have stated multiple times. There's feminists, for instance, who want to begin lowering the testosterone level of males
yeah.
at birth so that
Crazy.
the strength equalization is the same, right? And things like this. So
That is absolutely crazy, man. Jesus Christ. Ben with the $10 super chat says, people like Andrew because men want to be religious, but the idea of a Protestant quote, Jesus is my boyfriend, or how you have to be a pushover if you're a Christian, Andrew shows the quote original way. What are your thoughts on that?
oh, I mean, it's true.
Okay.
So if you look at, I'll explain the split.
Okay.
Protestantism is somewhere around 60-40. The Catholic Church is around the same, right? Now, don't quote me. This isn't direct. I'm just explaining that it's lopsided.
Okay.
Women versus men.
Okay.
So
Gotcha.
women in the Protestant Church, about 60%, right, to 40%.
Yeah.
I think it's actually even higher than that. And I think Catholics, it's closer to 60-40. But again, these are just rough estimates.
Okay.
But it is
All right.
lopsided. Orthodoxy is the other direction. It has more men in it than it does women because it adheres to the actual patriarchal nature of Christianity.
Who
This
knew?
is not this is not to make the statement that women are not valued inside of Christian ethics. They are, and they should be. But the idea that this is not a patriarchal faith is just absolutely insane. And you see a lot of Catholic feminists who can't even reconcile this. Imagine the patriarchal nature of Catholicism itself, where you have a pope who can only be a male as the Godhead, who is giving out papal decrees, right? He is the representation of, let's say, the mouth of God in this particular, hierarchical structure.
Mhm.
That moves down to his bishops, who are in a hierarchy, and to cardinals and to priests, and et cetera, et cetera. And all of them must be men within this hierarchy. So these are patriarchal faiths, and they always have been patriarchal faiths. Same thing, even the apostles, all of it, right? All of the teachers of Christianity have always been men, and they always will be. So what has happened is, as Protestants have perverted the word of God, they have made things like female pastors a thing. They've made,
Oh my God, yeah.
women as the kind of new voice of the church is absurd. It's not that women's concerns, right? Their concerns inside of churches shouldn't be adhered to, but they shouldn't have any authority whatsoever. And they've never. So that's not the way it's supposed to work. So what happens is, oftentimes women will try to browbeat me into what I call the cult of be nice, where they reduce the entire religious ethical framework of Christianity and Christian ethics to just be nice.
Turn the other cheek.
Well, it's just be nice. It's a motto, and it's based around a culturally relative version even of what niceness is. And so ultimately, it has nothing to do with Christian ethics at all. They're just trying to weaponize your faith against you. And it's perfectly acceptable for you to tell them to shut up, sit down, mind their business, go away, tell them that they're dumb, that they're retarded, because ultimately what they're doing is perverse. right?
Yes.
They're doing something which is perverse, and so you really don't have to put up with it. And I think you even have a duty not to.
And not only that, I think making women leaders in the church, that's part of your definition of feminism, is the dissolving male authority, breaking up the patriarchy. We got quite a few super chats. CHD with the $5 super chat says, thanks for answering my questions, BPF. I think it's called, quote, catch and release game. Glenn explained it, spinning plates without sleeping with them. I guess that's what he was talking about. I think he's referring to you getting experience with women without having to get your dick wet. In other words, I think that's what he's probably referring to.
Yeah. Well, why do you need to feed into degeneracy in order to, like, it's such a bizarre take that you have to sleep with women in order to get experience with them. When I asked Myron about this directly, he also didn't really have an answer as to why you needed to sleep with them.
And it's
why is that a necessary kind of entailment of the position of dating? It seems to me that courtship and dating, you can get to know somebody really well.
Yeah.
And people bring up bizarre issues with this. I can even give you some counter arguments that I've heard. Okay. Here's a good one: sexual compatibility. You want to make sure that you're sexually compatible with the other person. What's so bizarre about this, though, is that isn't the goal to get a virgin?
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
So if the goal is to get a virgin, how do you test out sexual compatibility?
Right.
That's a contradiction in terms. But let's assume for a moment that they're not a virgin, right? Okay. Even then, almost every man on earth is compatible sexually with every woman on earth.
That's absolutely right.
The reason that is necessary is because otherwise our genetics would not be able to continue, and we would expire. So
yes. Oh my God, yes. Yeah, the female orgasm is irrelevant to the actual purpose of sex, which of course is to reproduction. Is for reproduction. And it also and I think you won me over with this argument, and I think you are 1,000% right. We got a lot of men out here who are incels and virgins. They know, trust me, these boys know female nature inside and out, and they've never had sex before. So you don't have to be some sex demon to figure out who women really are. Because just like you said, sex is in the grand pantheon of all relationships, it really is kind of the least important part in terms of getting to know someone. You don't have to have sex with a woman to get to know her. And I think some of us, and listen, I've been down that road. I've slept with more women than I care to admit. But the reason why is just because, and I'll admit it, I just didn't have dick discipline. See a pretty woman, I want to go have sex with her, blah, 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 blah. And what it comes down to is I think there are a lot of alcoholics who say, well, the reason I'm an alcoholic is because something happened to me when I was younger, or I had this trauma. And that could all well be true. But there are a lot of alcoholics out there who just like to get drunk.
Yeah. So this is a good way to put it, right?
Okay.
I drank because I enjoy it.
Yeah.
I'm not an alcoholic by any metric, but I like to drink because I enjoy it.
Sure.
And I'm sure most of these guys like to have sex with a lot of women because they enjoy having sex with a lot of women. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that the position is justified. It doesn't mean that the position itself makes any sense, or that by not engaging in this, you wouldn't actually have better outcomes and better societal outcomes. And as men, we understand we have greater duties, not just to ourselves, but to our community. And our community becomes our country. And so all of this is an extension of our own genetic gene pool, and also of our own kind of, wide birth family. So it's going to always go like this. Your family is the most important thing.
Right.
If you're taking care of yourself, you're taking care of your family. Your respect in status, your social status climbs astronomically. Most men, even degenerate men, have some kind of respect for a person who has a family.
Sure.
Right? Sure. At least some rudimentary respect. However, most men who are high men of status, who own large businesses, corporations, the real people who can help you out in life, often look for men who have families, because it shows and demonstrates that they have some sense of duty, responsibility, and they probably won't leave their job or workplace to be dependent on their income from that job. So they're probably a much safer bet than single men. So there's a status which happens with that. We start at the baseline family unit, but then what about the community itself? Right. Well, when men have a greater duty to the community, they become leaders inside of that community, just by virtue of who they are and what they're doing. Perhaps they're assisting with charitable events, or maybe they're event coordinators, or perhaps they're primary people of interest at their church, things like this, but they're fulfilling some kind of duty, and that'll give them status inside of the community as well. And then this extends into the political. Maybe perhaps you are a letter writer or somebody who wants to be involved in campaigns at the national level, right? And then so all of these are status jumps, but it all starts with the idea of a very connected family unit and a nuclear family unit. Now, does that mean that when you say nuclear family, that grandpa can't come live with you if he's sick? Of course not. Grandpa can come live with you. Does that mean your kids need to be out of the house by the time they're 18? Of course not, especially not in this economy. And is cross-generational family units or bicentennial farms, things like this, appropriate? Of course. When we say nuclear family, all that we're talking about is this. We're talking about a primary structure where there's a mom and a father. They have some kind of deep connection with each other. They both put the welfare of their children and each other before themselves. And when they do that, that family unit is going to be bonded and very strong. And then that opens up the avenues for community. Now, what is the community's duty to you? Well, the church community's duty to you is to help support you through times of trouble and strife, to assist you in your marital problems, to even assist you in financial straits, dire straits, help you perhaps through nepotism and other things, get various jobs that you might need and things like this so that you can perform your duty back, right? So that's the community's kind of duty back to you. So men understand this almost intuitively. And one of the things that drives us insane and has driven men completely insane over the last 40 years or so is that the community itself is vanishing. Example of this, the reason Gen Z is so fucked up. When I was a kid, I would play marbles in the street. I'd play like I would go out with my friends and we had little bags of marbles and we would play in the gutter. You know what I mean? We would play marbles and we would, we'd play basketball. We do all kinds of things, right? I would go out during the day and I wouldn't come back till it was dark basically.
Leave the house
till the street lights came on. So the thing is that gives you a good sense of community.
That makes perfect. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, that gives you a good sense of community.
Is that the reason? Is the fact that men intuitively understand that a man with a family, wife, kids, etc., is that the reason why we don't elect, players for our president? Is that the reason why? Is that the reason why I guess all of our politicians, have to be seen with their wife and kids? Is that intuition that we're all thinking? And I think that goes with both men and women.
That moves towards trust, the trust effect. So what you're seeing there is a sign of status. It's saying, okay, not only am I a community leader, perhaps I'm rich, perhaps I'm handsome, right? But I have the ultimate status in society, which is a wife and children. And so this becomes the ultimate status and the thing which needs to be protected over all other things, which is the family unit itself. And so the idea here that they're trying to show you is, hey, I'm like you, right? I want this thing here as protected as you want those things over there, which is your family dynamic, you know what I mean? And this type of thing. So the family unit itself has to be the first order of protection, so that you can fulfill your other duties and obligations to the community, and so that they can fulfill it back to you.
That makes perfect sense. I've never had it explained that way, but I think we all understand that. It's just every once in a while, some guys like me have to have it explained to me. Your wife is in the chat. Says, Donovan, please DM me later. I would love to send you a copy of my book. Absolutely. Mike Steele with the $5 super chat says, shout out to my man Donovan and the GOAT Andrew. And yes, one of my concerns about marrying a Christian woman is that she will be, quote, wet for Jesus.
What does that mean?
What do you think he means by that?
I'm not sure. I haven't heard that term before.
Yeah, neither have I. If you would in the chat, clarify that if you would. Infinite Oneness, $5 super chat says, Andrew, please recommend books to be a logician / debater like yourself for someone who is a complete knucklehead. Wow.
I would look at it. I'd look at the history of philosophy. I had a copy of it right next to me that I could show you, but I reference it quite a bit because it doesn't just give the ideas behind the pathways of logic, but the actual stories of the people and how they came to these pathways of logic. And I think that that's very helpful.
Yeah, because I can, and I've never read or seen that book, but I can tell every once in a while when you're in these debates, I can tell you sort of go into that well. Ben with the $5 super chat says, counter argument is sex is a product of understanding how to attract a woman, not the goal. It's a reflection of understanding how they work. What say you? I
I
guess
don't
this
understand.
is. I guess this is the counter argument to you don't have to have sex with women to understand women.
Well, so you have two problems. The first is that you ruin the duty aspect. So
Okay.
if it is the case that you think that men should marry a virgin, then if you fuck a chick and take away her virginity, then you're basically ruining the potentiality for another man to have that virgin, right?
Right.
So that's the first
Of course.
that's the first failure, right? Failure in duty. The second failure is I don't really understand how sex is a necessary understanding for the attraction of women. I don't understand why you could not attract them, even to the point where they would like to engage in the act with you, but then you just don't engage in the act. I don't think I don't understand why that's problematic.
That makes it. That makes sense. I've never heard it explained that way. Client Siege 20 with the $10 super chat says, "What would be your prescription to be a secular man who wants to have a family in the U.S. when the man has no authority over a family anymore due to the state the state usurping the father's authority?"
The only thing, so this is going to be something of a poison pill, right? And this sucks because prescriptively, here's the truth.
Okay.
The truth is that if you're a secular man, okay, and you get married, you're a damn fool. Every law is staged against you. Now you can do things to mitigate this, like a prenuptial agreement and other things. But here's the thing I don't really understand about secularists getting married at all.
Okay.
What is the point? So if it's not for the purpose of religiosity, any declaration which you make can equally be broken by word.
Right.
So if you say, well, my word is that we're together and exclusive and married, but we don't involve the state, and by word we can break that, right? Why is that not just as good as, well, by word is not good enough, we must have the state? I don't actually understand that. That makes no sense from a secular perspective. Why can't you just by word have marriage? Like that's never been something that I've been able to reconcile in my head. If you can have all the same perks of marriage without having the state introduced into some type of contractual obligation for your partner, why wouldn't you do that?
That's a very good question. We got somebody in the chat here, Andrew, who's just talking shit. Says that's hypocritical bullshit. Andrew, you want to know what? No cap busting. How about this?
What's the hypocrisy?
If you really debate this, dude, I'll put the link in the chat right now, and you can come up and tell him why this is hypocritical bullshit. Because
let's do that.
Debate in the chat.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that.
Anybody can debate in the chat. Like, it's real easy to hide behind that avatar. You know what we look like, motherfucker. So if you disagree, come on up. And I'll tell you this: if you continue to put shit in the chat, I'm gonna ban you until you come up in here, because I'm tired. I'm tired of these finger debaters. Ghost 1978 with the $5 super chat says, Andrew, please explain the TikTok invasions, and do you think Donovan should join one? I have no idea what that is.
Well, I think you should watch one, and then you can make up your mind.
Okay, TikTok invasion, very good. All right, I'm gonna play a bit of I'm gonna mention two people, and you're just gonna give me your thoughts just off the top of your head here. The first person, Wes Watson. Go.
Okay. A strict materialist who bases his life around material status, which is not something which is particularly valued by most men or women. Well, I mean, for women, for non-spiritual reasons, perhaps for resource reasons, some women do value that, right? But when you're talking about social status among men, material status is not nearly as high of importance as other things are. So he's a strict materialist.
Okay. All right.
That's how I would describe Wes Watson.
Okay, very good. Person number two, Destiny.
Well, Destiny suffers from a worse problem. He's a strict materialist and nihilist. So he would not describe himself as a nihilist, but his viewpoints would reduce down to relativism and then nihilism. So he's a moral relativist, and then that always reduces to nihilist.
You know what? I think you're right. Destiny is one. He's got all the signs. He's definitely a nihilist. Holy moly, he talks very.
Now, look, can I ask you something, Donovan?
Sure. Yeah.
Somebody was telling me that Destiny wants to debate with you, but you don't want to tangle with him. Oh,
because I'm not a very good debater. I mean,
that's fair.
debating.
I mean, that's fair. That's fair. Like, that's totally fair.
I mean, the thing is, and I guess the reason why I'm not good at debating. There are many reasons I'm not good at debating, but I don't know. I'm susceptible to the traps and the techniques. And, well, you said a lot there, Donovan, and blah, 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 blah. I just don't, Andrew, I just don't do well when people are just talking bullshit. Like, when I know someone's trying to handle me, when I know someone is being dishonest in order to win an argument, I just don't know what to do. Clearly, the truth is on our side, and I know that it's on our side, but debates are just not something I have ever been good at. I think maybe I could get good at debating, I suppose, if I practiced. But, and here's the thing. People say, you should debate Destiny, blah, 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 blah. Look, man, Destiny lost his girlfriend to a dude, or to a dude who wears a dress, right? Like, you know,
a twink on a sink.
Oh, Jesus. I mean, clearly, I don't know, man, that there are a lot of men with money who are losers. I think Destiny is a loser. I definitely think he's a nihilist. But the reason I don't want to debate Destiny is because I'm just not good at debating. If there were ever a forum where we could sit down and have a meaningful conversation, or if there were some sort of debate rule where I would get 2 minutes uninterrupted and he would get 2 minutes uninterrupted, I think I would definitely be more than happy to do that. But Destiny, his strategy really just seems to be, he wants to obfuscate everything, then he wants to diffuse everything and talk over, under, and through you. He's very good at filibustering, talking very, very quickly, and he's very well spoken, but he's like an Adderall junkie, at this point, it's almost like he's high on meth all the time. I just don't speak well with people who communicate in that way. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I don't know how the hell you did it.
Well, I mean, I understand. There's people who aren't very good at debating, and that's not what their function is. And I don't have any problem with that. I was just curious.
Yeah. I really wish I were good at debating, because my brand would be, a lot bigger, and I think I'd be able to convey my points, a lot more. I'm just not. I don't know, Andrew. I'm not good with the word salad and the verbal jujitsu and how to, well, if he says this, then you should say that. I'm just not good at that. I'm good at talking facts. I'm good at telling people about what my opinion is. I'm just not good at debating. I never have been. So, Ben with the $5 super chat says, Donovan has the nice glasses, but isn't signed up to be a master debater. Andrew, enroll him for free. He's an asset. Well, I appreciate that, guys. I think I could be good if I really worked at it, but I don't think I need Andrew as a sensei. I think I'd probably just maybe try and do that on my own. That'd be a for you, that's for sure. Let's see. Oh, yes. All Dion says you'd have to know the rules of logic in order to be a good debater. That makes sense. Just a couple more questions here, Andrew, and we'll get you out of here.
It's your time, man. Take as much of it as you want.
Oh, okay. Well, I really, really appreciate this. I'm going to tell you what, I've learned a lot during this conversation. This is one of the coolest conversations I've had in a while. One of the questions that we get in this space, and I'm sure you get it a lot, is, will modern women ever change? Will feminism ever be vanquished for good? I tend to be a little bit cynical because I think you and I'm 47. I don't know how old you are, but just, describing your childhood, we're probably both Gen Xers. I think Generation X.
I'm a millennial.
Oh, you are a millennial. Okay. Oh, wow. And what do you know about playing marbles in the gutter? Okay.
Yeah, I was on the cusp. So.
Okay, fair enough. I tend to be a little bit cynical about this because, being a child of the 80s, I got to see the last vestiges of what we believe is true masculinity. I remember like a movie like Rocky IV could never be on the silver screen today. He-Man, Mr. T, all that good stuff. Do you think feminism, do you think this ridiculous culture that we find ourselves steeped in, do you think there's a way out? And if so, what's the way?
So feminism is not going to go anywhere anytime soon, because the power dynamics are set in such a way where not just the powers that be, but most people themselves are to some degree or another feminists. And it has been baked into their brain that any resistance to this is a form of fascism, dictatorship, totalitarianism, whatever buzzword that you can interject. But there's a great opportunity. And the opportunity is that a lot of these women and men who advocate feminist ideals are becoming very quickly reproductive dead ends. And we can see this with the birth rate crisis, which is happening inside of the West. But there's some silver lining, which is that the heavily religious are reproducing and the secularists are not reproducing.
Right.
And so an effect of this is that intergenerationally, we have a really good chance here of doing something about this. Meaning, if you just do your one due diligence and have some children, a couple of children, you know what I mean, and raise them well to resist feminism, the idea that the other side can compete drastically goes down. Now, this is not something which is going to happen overnight, but feminism didn't happen overnight. It was a multi-hundred-year process, and it probably will take a good 100 years to eradicate it. But the thing is like it can be done.
So you said feminism. See, because for me, I thought feminism started like in the 60s, but you just said that this is
you're talking there about second wave. First wave feminism happened during the suffragettes. So and then third wave happened later. We're in fourth wave feminism, or even fifth wave by some metrics now. So the bra burning and all of that, feminism had been alive and well long before that, with women's suffrage and other priorities that feminist leaders had. And it was still in existence even before that, with reforms in the 1800s. So altogether, feminism has been around for a long time. It took a couple hundred years for them to really implement their agenda. And it's going to take a long time to unwind that agenda. It's happening, but it's happening slowly.
Yes. That's very true. Yeah, one thing that's clear is I think I definitely need to educate myself a little bit more on the history of feminism. Maybe at that point, I'll be a better debater, I suppose. Darian Murphy with the $2 super chat says, who is the author of History of Philosophy?
Yeah, I'll have to go pull it up. I can't remember his name off the top of my head.
All right, somebody in the chat will figure that out. We have the internet now these days, guys. Come on. Mike Steele with the $10 super chat says, clarification. This is the Wet for Jesus comment. He says, clarification. A woman who is, quote, wet for Jesus can't go 60 seconds without talking about him, and her heart is so full of Jesus, there's no room left for her husband. That's interesting.
Like a zealot. I don't know much about that, right?
Okay.
I can understand where that would be an annoyance. I do think that it's far more preferable to have a woman who's rooted in Christian ethics. But part of a good staunch Christian lifestyle is also paying mind to your husband's needs and paying mind to your children's needs. And while the foundational Christianity is the most important aspect of that, in my opinion, I could see where what this guy is talking about could be annoying, right?
Okay,
like that could be actually annoying. So I guess I would have to be a bit more kind of specific. Like if he's talking about the Bible thumpers who like will just kind of beat you over the head with the Bible every day, things like that. Yeah,
for God, whatever,
Yeah, I understand.
And just to rewind a little bit, just going back to the, you have to have sex with women to understand women. I have routinely said from the start, even, and I started this when I started my red pill, content creation journey, I'm still with the same woman. And, I regale people with the tales of the, the hoes that I, slayed back there on the Vegas Strip for, going on 7 or 8 years. But I've always maintained that even though that was a magic carpet ride, my life today, my life is 10 times better with one woman than it ever was chasing after multiple women. That is one thing that I have always maintained. And I always wondered, I had always wondered why that is. Can you, and there are obvious reasons, but mentally, I'm thinking to myself, okay, I had a lot of fun. Why do you think, in your opinion, why am I much more satisfied as, I don't know, it's kind of a weird question, but why do you think men like me are much more satisfied in relationships than, pursuing short-term one-night stands?
Well, for the same reason that there's no real satisfaction in moderate dopamine hits or drug abuse or things like this. You're abusing yourself, you're abusing your body, you're getting some forms of moderate satisfaction or a very quick feeling of fulfillment, just like if you buy a high ticket item. The thing about buying a high ticket item is, isn't it amazing how quickly you get bored with it? Right?
Oh, so, you are not kidding. Oh my God.
So the thing is that this is the same thing with all of these sort of low level dopamine hits. The idea of an interpersonal relationship should not have anything to do with the dopamine effect to your brain. It should have to do with the fulfillment of duties, oaths, and long-term fulfillment is going to require those things. And so these voids that exist within people, they make for themselves, and they're not closed with random, sex with strangers. They're not closed
Sure.
with randomized sexual encounters any more than they're closed with drugs, alcohol,
Sure.
meth, or anything else in between. None of these things are helpful to closing that gap. Satisfaction and fulfillment comes from a duty-filled, purpose-driven life.
Okay, very good. Wow, good, good explanation. Corey Cannon with the $5 super chat says, big fan of you both. Good to see y'all having a conversation. Andrew has opened me to orthodoxy, and Donovan is one of the ones that opened me to the red pill. Let me seamlessly. Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. Ben with another $5 super chat says, ask Andrew, a good question. He says, ask Andrew what new challenges he has faced over the past couple of years becoming more famous. What was the most surprising? And how did you handle it? Yes, your Q rating, I guess your notoriety is a lot bigger, higher, wider than it was, a couple of years ago. How has your life changed since then, for better or worse?
There's been a lot of insane changes.
Sure.
Obviously it takes some adjustment to get used to personal attacks but that really wasn't the big adjustment. The big adjustment came with the responsibility of understanding that you can very easily have parasocial relationships with people which are not actually good for them or good for you. So one thing that I see happen a lot with large creators is they become, and it's almost impossible to avoid, there is a bit of the cult of personality which happens, right?
Yeah.
So I'm an entertaining guy. I run an entertaining show.
Right.
I do entertaining debates. I do a lot of high octane content, and I talk a lot to my chat, and I talk a lot to various people. And but as a side effect of that, there is often this parasocial relationship, which can happen with some people. It doesn't happen with almost anybody, but it happens with enough people. If you just think even 10 people, out of tens of thousands, that's a lot of people.
Yeah, it is.
and it's being cautious with that and noting that you can say something to them even in an offhand way,
and
that they can that could affect them in a very negative way. And so I don't give advice. Like I'm not a guru, right? Something like this. I have people who offer to pay me tons of money to give them advice and things like this. And I don't do it. I'm not an advice giver. That is not what my function is here for, to be a guru or a guidance counselor. My function is here to represent a worldview the best that I possibly can on behalf of people who share it and can't for themselves do it. Okay. And so the big change came because I actually respond to all of my fan mail, all of it. If sometimes it takes me a long time, but I respond to it. And I've always been that was a big change, right?
So if somebody, emails you, hey, Andrew, my girlfriend is a feminist, what should I do? Well, clearly the right thing to do would be to get rid of her. What would you advise not advise? How would you respond to that if you don't give advice?
I would say thank you for the interest. Advice is not really a thing that I do. I'm glad that you enjoy the show. However, without understanding in very intricate detail what your interpersonal relationship is, and having actual kind of knowledge of you that way, there's no possible way for me to even give good advice. You know what I mean? Sure. Now that's different than a general off the cuff remark, right? And so, for instance, if somebody DM me and is like, hey, should I drink this thing labeled bleach under my sink? I'm going to tell them no. Right? Like I'm going to tell them no. Right. So the thing is like those types of things I think are different than when somebody's asking you for really kind of interpersonal advice themselves about relationships and things like that. And it's like, I'm not that guy, right? And who the hell am I to give personal advice anyway? I'm not familiar with, I don't have any training in that, and I don't have the kind of background which would even be necessary to advise you in that way. So I'm a political analyst, and I'm a political satirist, and I'm a blood sport debater, and I'm a great entertainer. But I don't know much about how to reconcile interpersonal dynamics between people who I don't even know.
If you were, because I get these emails all the time, Andrew, and I think this is probably a derivative. And listen, I'll be honest with you, I suffer from the being sort of a cult of personality myself. Just like you said, it's almost impossible to avoid. You're constantly getting validation from people all the time. What should, instead of giving advice, and this is just me asking for me, because I get these emails all the time. What should I tell? In your opinion, how do you think I should handle that? Do you think I should tell them, hey, you need to do X?
Sounds like you're asking me for advice.
Oh, Jesus Christ, Andrew. Let me think. If let me think. How would you handle it if someone shot you a paragraph? And again, not surface level stuff. Like they actually took the time and said, Andrew, this is what's going on in my marriage, blah, 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 blah. What would you tell them? How would you respond to that?
Well, I would tell them that I'm not equipped to deal with those problems or those challenges. I would generally refer them to a priest, clergy member, somebody who has the training and the experience necessary to help them reconcile those very distinct and interpersonal situations, which require a lot of understanding about somebody's personal situation. I don't want to be that involved in a person's life.
Okay.
That's one. Right. And then two, even if I was, I don't have the kind of requisite knowledge set there to do anything about it anyway. You know what I mean? Yeah, so there's times where I've responded to some emails where I've been like, somebody will say this horrible thing happened to me by this person. I might say something like, man, sounds like a real bitch, right? Or something like that. But that's not trying to kind of give marriage counseling or things like that. That's not my function. And the thing is that what terrifies me about that role, especially, is that I could potentially do a lot more harm to a person's situation than good simply through ignorance. Like I just don't know what I don't know. And recognizing that, I think, is a sign of humility and not trying to grant myself some sort of arrogance where I can solve people's individual interpersonal problems. Political solutions in many ways are easier than interpersonal relationship issues.
You got that right. Jesus Christ. It's almost like I can admit that I'm just not a very good debater. I guess there's a little humility on my end. Siege D with the $10 super chat says, "What up, Donovan and B? What does BPF mean?"
It means Big Papa Flannel.
Okay. Big Papa Flannel. I promote TSR Academy to find and build a quality woman, as well as filter out the bad ones, and Debate University to know how to debate when someone challenges your worldview and frame. Okay, I will definitely look into that. Phoenix Light Games says, made a super chat above and a question in Discord. Just give me 2 seconds to find this. I apologize for that. Phoenix Light Games always asks very thought-provoking questions, but I don't seem to be finding it here. I don't see that super chat, PLG. I'm gonna have to move on to the next one. Clan Siege 20 says, would our first world way of life have to erode in order for feminism to start eroding in a meaningful way? That is a very good question.
Nope. Often nations, Jordan Peterson was one of the first kind of mainstream psychologists to begin pointing out this phenomenon. But in most of the egalitarian nations, especially the Nordic nations, when they become extremely egalitarian, a lot of times they actually begin to move back to traditional gender roles and begin to shrug and chafe against these very systems. So I don't think a first world way of life has to end in order for there to be a movement back towards patriarchy. I think that religious grounding foundation and ethics are, so essentially the way I view it is, politics is downstream of culture, but culture itself is downstream of religion. And your legends, your religiosity, things like this, they ground the ethics of the society. And then the societal ethics is what grounds the political class, because that's what the society is. So no, ultimately, I think a movement towards a more base Christianity or a more base religious foundationalism is going to keep and maintain your first world way of life. What are my proofs for this? Well, we can take a look back in the United States just a short time ago, about 80 years ago, and you can see that most people, at least at the very least, identified at 90+% Christian. And you can see that the divorce rate was very, very low. Out of wedlock children, very, very low. All of these things were very, very low. and feminism was still in play, but it hadn't been introduced into its second wave form yet, and things like this. But very much their quality of life was a first world wave life.
Just real quick, and I actually had just forgot that hierarchy. You said that You said that culture is an offshoot of religion, and politics is the offshoot of
downwind. So you can say
okay.
Politics downwind of culture, culture is downwind of religion.
Okay, got it. Okay, very
religion
good.
Informs culture, culture informs politics.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Very good. Phoenix Light Games with the $5 super chat. This is the one he was referring to. Says Destiny wants to be right. Oh, I'm sorry. He says Destiny wants to be right, but we in this space want to get it right. I can't stand conversations when I know people are purposefully being disingenuous. That's why I would. And Andrew, you could probably tell I'm a high octane guy myself. And I can readily and freely admit that I do lack emotional control when it comes to people lying, being dishonest, or being disingenuous. And I think mastery over that, I think I'm going to have to master that before I ever get into any kind of debates with anybody. How do you stay calm and cool and because people take shots.
I think it's easier to wreck people when they're bad faith.
Yeah, I'm just
like, and when people are disingenuous, I think it's even easier to make them look stupid. So the thing is like, I prefer when an opponent goes bad faith. I'm happy to just kind of like get right down in the mud with them and go, oh, we're doing this. Let's do this. Like, I'm just as happy. So I'm just as happy to be arguing with a prominent atheist like Matt Dillahunty as I am to argue a progressive down in the muck and mud like Destiny. Like both to me are highly fruitful and entertaining. So
absolutely,
when people say things like bad faith, it's like, you can be bad faith, that's fine, but just don't expect me to be good faith.
Okay, that makes sense. How do you? And sometimes people will take personal shots. All of a sudden, when they find themselves losing a debate, what do they always do? They go ad hom. How do you handle that? Because you seem to. I don't know how it is that you handle it, because
do it back. Just do it back. My idea here is it's the settle down principle, right? Okay. So the idea is like an insult or an attack has only the amount of power that you give it, and it's within the confines of your reaction is where the power comes in. So if you react in a certain way to it, right, that's a win, and if you don't react in a certain way, it's not. But the thing is like, if you have a very sharp wit and a very sharp tongue, when somebody tries to attack you with a personal hit, and you strike back almost instantly, what you're doing is you're showing them like, we can do this if you want, but this is all it's going to be. Or alternatively, we can get back to the topic at hand, but just know I'm not going to shy away from either one.
Wow. Okay. Very good. All right. That's actually a very good one. Plumpy with the $5 super chat. This is a quote. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the principalities, powers, rulers of darkness, and spiritual wickedness in high places. Do you know where that's from?
The Bible.
Oh, okay. Well, there we go. That shows what I know, right? RZ with the $10 super chat says, Andrew, have you ever lost the debate? If so, is there footage on YouTube you can direct us to? If not, who would you consider to be your hardest or toughest opponent? That's a very
I've lost debates before, and I'll lose debates again in the future. If you do as many debates as I do, you're going to lose.
Take some L's.
And sometimes I've lost in the Discord against randos, and it depends on the position. And sometimes it's actually good. Sometimes I'll take positions I want to lose on so that I can understand the faults in those positions. You know what I mean?
Wow. No.
So yeah, there's plenty of times that I've lost on the mainstream stage, not as much, but yeah, that's happened as well. I've always contended that in the first debate I had with Destiny, he beat me pretty handily. Though that was the most good faith debate I think we've ever had together. He did end up winning that debate by my estimation, though that was the first time I'd ever taken on a professional debater. So I don't think I've lost any since, and I've had many with him. So the thing is not just that, there's been some other ones too. Another guy, his name was Synth Posting. I think that he beat me in a global warming debate. And so there's been a few times where I've taken L's for sure that I recognize as being L's. You can't win every debate. And sometimes you're going to lose. In fact, I would even say that I stalemated on a position which was a hard position to take against a guy named Wick TV. Though I don't think I took a loss on it, but I definitely it was only a stalemate. I definitely didn't bludgeon him. And the topic we were on was like an absurd topic about, power with propaganda or something. It didn't really mean much. But yeah, there have been definitely times where I have lost debates for sure.
Okay,
and my chat, as my chat points out, they cope about this a lot. They do cope about this a lot. So the chat has handed me a 99.99999% defeat, but there was one day where I beat the entire chat, and it's a day which will live in infamy, and it was in a very long stream, and all they can do is cope. To this day, they cope about that L and pretend that it was secretly not an L, but it was a fucking L. It was an L.
Very good. And if there is footage about, if there is a footage that proves that you lost the debate, like the quality is probably like Zapruder likes, probably like grainy 7-Eleven video or something like that. It's been a while. Ben with a $10 super chat says, Andrew, oh my God, dude, anytime someone says genuine question, just be ready. Can you recall a time you lost the debate within the last couple of years? Can you name, well, he just answered that. Can you name a debate you did, quote, great, and one you did, quote, bad, and it sticks out in your mind? I think we already asked that with the previous question. Ben with a $2 super chat says, personally, I think you lost to Jasmine Jafar. Agree?
On what? On what?
Oh, okay. Very good. Yeah.
Like on what?
Come at me, Ben.
The second debate, she came at me with studies she hadn't read. That was pretty humiliating, and she spurred out pretty hard for about 40 minutes while I was laughing. And then the first debate, she couldn't ground any of her ethical foundations and essentially conceded to me that if you wanted to have mob rule of Christian ethics, that was completely moral from her framework. And so I was just like, I don't know how you can win more than that. I don't know how you can win more than that.
Yeah, I was going to say that sounds pretty decisive. Steve Sandman says, ask Andrew about the necessity of external boundaries of conduct and self-discipline for men and women. That's a good question.
Necessity of external boundaries of conduct. Well, I mean, yeah. So, duty necessarily is going to entail boundaries. Like, there's no way around it. Otherwise, you can't even tell a person what their duties are. Right. So, when you're talking about self-discipline, that would move into virtue ethics, which is a part of Christian ethics. So, all virtues are rooted in self-discipline. All of them. There's not a single one of them that doesn't require it. The Stoics knew this, who followed virtue ethics, but Stoicism itself is not just a way of being. People think that Stoicism means passive, or not passive, but doesn't show emotion, that type of thing. Stoicism is a philosophical branch, and it follows virtues. And so Stoicism itself requires self-discipline to follow those virtues. So yeah, the self-discipline is extremely important, and boundaries or duties not even possible without boundaries.
Yeah, they seem inextricably linked together. I don't think you can have one without the other, in my opinion. Daddy Dame says, Andrew, you seem cool and collected. Have you ever lost your cool in a debate? That's a good question. Okay.
Yeah.
Dr. B84 says, Andrew cooked Jasmine. Oh boy, here we go. Fashion Fantasy says, the Crucible merch is fire. As a designer, I can confirm this. Okay.
Yes, it is. Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah. What is your website? Is it thecrucible.com?
Thecrucible.video.
Video. There we go. Ken Rose with the $10 super chat gives us a thumbs up. Phoenix Light Game says, didn't Jasmine Jafar say that incest wasn't a big deal?
Yeah.
She's a joke. She's a whore that should not be taken seriously. She's not really a lawyer. No law firm in the U.S. would claim her. Wow. That is quite provocative. Hurricane Paro, and I've got one last question for you. He says, Donovan, what's good, DS? I'm just here to apologize to you for not believing you about the female nature. You are right about women. I'm tired of defending these women without me getting credit. Well, you don't do this for the credit. My last question for you, Andrew, is about the Manosphere at large. Obviously, the Manosphere entails. There are a lot of. The Manosphere has many derivatives. You've got the red pill, you've got MGTOW, you've got the Christian, the Orthodox Christian section, you've got the men's rights activists, you've got the PUA, the pickup artists. In your opinion, what do you think have been the biggest factors in really making the Manosphere sort of a laughingstock in many ways? Because I remember in the beginning when I first joined, yeah, we got attacked in this and that and the other, but then there really started to be sort of a lot of infighting. And I would actually contend that the Manosphere's worst enemy is no longer feminists. I think the Manosphere's worst enemy is the Manosphere. Do you agree with that?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
Okay.
I think that I think that any predominantly online kind of, yeah, I hesitate to even say the word movement, but phenomenon, that's a better
Okay.
way.
All
Any
right.
online phenomenon which has a potential to create change of any kind, which is positive towards patriarchal endeavors,
Sure.
is
Yeah.
going to necessarily become infiltrated very, very quickly. And it's going to become infiltrated by government goons, by leftist scum,
Yeah.
and it's going to be infiltrated by grifters who utilize the packaging in order to sell a product. So all of these things in combination is something which all groups which are online suffer from. And you could make the same claim that any sort of phenomenon which is going on online, which many people are attracted to for some reason, is going to suffer from this problem. This doesn't matter if it's politics or it's non-political. Everything eventually becomes political if the phenomenon is big enough, no matter what. It doesn't matter what it is. It will become political if the phenomenon becomes large. In this case, the politicization of the Manosphere really began pre Tate and pre these guys, right? It really came into prominence before that, but the overt politicization of it came from the idea of this. If there really is a ton of disaffected young men, who gets to utilize them? Who gets to personalize them as their army? Who gets to personalize them as an extension or a militant arm of their voice, right? This is the idea. So the left says, we'll do that. We're going to take that. The right says, no, we're going to take that. And this group says, no, we're going to take that. So they're all kind of doing a tug of war for the soul of what what you're calling the Manosphere. Ultimately, masculine Christianity will become the default for the Manosphere, and I'll explain why. It's because it is the only group which involves itself inside of this particular sphere, which can give prescriptive claims to the descriptive claims. No other group can do this, and because of that, we're always going to eventually win out. Our ethical system will always be superior to everybody else's, and we'll be able to argue it better without taking away the core thing that people want, which is the ability to be fucking men, the ability to play Red Dead Redemption 2 and strap dynamite to a chick and throw her on the railroad tracks and watch the train hit her and not have to feel bad about it. You don't have to whine. You don't have to take bullshit. You don't have to be walked all over, right? None of those things are in comport the ethical nature of you being a stable human being based around a great ethical foundation that doesn't require you to be promiscuous or gravitating towards things which are just a materialism and dopamine hits to the brain over and over and over. So eventually you'll get all the good parts that people want with the prescriptive claims that those parts they don't like as much because they require actual action and self-discipline and things like this, but eventually we'll win.
Okay. Wow. My God. Relentless RG says, ask Andrew if it were the case, can the Crips be an organized militia? Okay.
No. No.
All right. Very good. That apparently that's what they're thinking. Ben with a $5 super chat says, Andrew telling people to relax is a great way to upset people. Ha 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 ha. I see you, Andrew. Yeah.
It is a good way. It is a good way to piss people off. I agree.
Tell them relax or calm down.
Relax. Just relax. Relax.
Andrew Starr with the $5 super chat says, Crucible Crew showing love. Andrew has never beaten chat, not even one time, has never happened.
Fucking liar. He's such a liar, dude. These people are they're fucking such scumbag. They won't give me my one. It's my one win. I can't have my one win. They won't even give me the one win.
I got a question in Discord. So I've got a question in Discord from Phoenix Light Game. Says, hey, Donovan, this is a question for both you and Andrew. Why is it that women who are sex workers or promiscuous in general, like Nala, gravitate towards the well, we all know that was Nala Griff because she admitted on a whatever podcast, navigate towards the church after they are done with their bullshit? Is it to avoid being shamed? Is it their only way out? I'm curious for your in-depth thoughts on the matter.
Yeah, I mean, I can explain that phenomenon pretty easily.
Okay.
Because inside of Christian ethics, the primary goal is to walk in the salvific nature of Jesus Christ, right? Jesus Christ is your savior, and he can forgive your sins, and only he can forgive your sins. And it's only through him is your pathway to heaven and to God, right? It's only through Christ you can do this. However, though your sins may be washed away, right, your reputation is not washed away with them. And what happens is a great conflation where these women think that they will gain a new reputation to go along with the salvation. And that's the primary motivator for why they do it. And then when they find out, well, wait a second, this actually does not preserve my reputation or in some way give me a new one. They begin to rage about how it is that everybody else who will not just concede that their reputation is erased are themselves in some way phony Christians. So essentially, it's called the prostitute to savior pipeline. And it's a very real phenomenon, which happens a lot. And the idea here just basically is, but now that I'm saved, I have a new reputation. And the idea is, well, no, you don't. Well, wait a second. Then you're a fake Christian, right? So now they get to make the determination as to who is the authority and who is not when it comes to Christian ethics, and that's why it occurs. It's a game of power, and the power is, well, in this power dynamic, because I have salvation, my reputation is now just as salvaged, and it's like, no, it's not. I'm sorry, but this does not prevent little Peter from getting beat up at school because kids are watching his mom blow 10 dudes at a party on a video from 5 years ago. And you say, but don't worry about it, little Petey. I have a new reputation now. And it's like, well, not really.
Right? Yeah, no, definitely not really. And here's another thing. You said, this is very important. You said Jesus can only forgive your sins. Listen, Jesus forgives people's sins. I ain't Jesus. You know what I mean? Like, listen, if you want to, if you genuinely want to go and have your, sins forgiven and be cleansed by the blood of the Lamb, that's fine. Do that, but you don't need to. And I think.
Hang on. I want to clarify. Perhaps I misspoke there. Okay. Jesus is the one who can absolve those sins. You as a person can forgive people. All right. I'm not saying that people can't forgive other people. Christians are called to forgive other people for their trespasses against them, but they can't. Those sins cannot be absolved or absorbed by Christ and his sacrifice by you. Only Jesus Christ can do that.
Okay, very good. And there was a thought that had just jumped to my mind, but I forgot what it was. Ben with the $2 super chat says, "Ask Andrew what word Myron recently said." I have no idea what that means.
It was the F slur, and it was hilarious. He said that to Harry Sison. I was laughing about it all morning.
Tens with the $2 super chat says, "Andrew, debate vegan ethics versus vegan gains."
I've done that before.
Are you kidding me?
Mm-mm.
Holy moly.
I've had multiple debates with vegan gains, and I'm happy to have another one with him. In fact, he reached out recently. We're going to set one up for next month, I think.
Holy moly. Dude, it's like a party trick. Let's see if he can debate this side, right? Daddy Dame with the $5 super chat wants to know, Andrew, have you ever convinced any of those girls on the whatever podcast to change their ways?
Yes.
Have you?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Very good. Contemporary Compendium with the $5 super chat says, shit, hashtag not one step back.
Shit.
Said shit. Mark T with the $5 super chat says, ask Andrew, who is someone that you want to debate most but haven't yet? That's a good question.
David Pakman.
David Pakman. Why? Why is
that? He has a very, some leftists have a face, just a hateable face.
Sure.
And they have hateable mannerisms to go with the hateable face, where you just where you look at him and you're just like, I fucking don't like you. And he has one of those faces and the mannerisms to go with it, where there's way too much smugness, where there really shouldn't be any smugness, and kind of making guys like that really lose their shit is something that I excel at, and I get great satisfaction in doing it.
Like Richard Reeves comes to mind. Oh my God, I can't stand.
Well, have you ever been scrolling YouTube and seen any of the hoof picking videos? Have you ever seen those?
No, say that one more time. You broke up.
Hoof pick. So what they do is they'll take a cow hoof, and they'll remove a nail, and then you watch them cut the nail, and all that. But it's really satisfying when they finally pop that thing out. You know what I mean? And there's an instant sense of relief for the cow, and you're like, oh man, you can almost relate to that sense of relief. It's like that with some of these leftists, right?
That's
Where
a
it's just
great
like where you're
analogy.
popping the nail out and the audience can be like, ah, it's so satisfying, you know? It's just like, finally.
That's a great analogy, man. Dawson Walters with the $5 Canadian super chat says, last night's debate was a W after talking to hundreds of girls on whatever. Wait a minute. You got to learn punctuation. After talking to hundreds of girls on whatever, what have you learned about the dating game? How can I get the girls? Okay.
So absolutely nothing. I'm not any closer to figuring out the dating dynamics than I was on day one. And I would be lying to you if I said anything different. What I have learned is just how much cognitive dissonance, how inconsistent these worldviews are, and how absolutely horrible many of these people can be. Which I would consider most of it to be like straight witchcraft in many cases.
Yeah.
But as far as attracting another mate, I think that the basic tenets of self-care, confidence, things like that seem to be the things that these women kind of all parrot. But I don't know how much of that you can trust.
No, I agree. They all do sound the same. It's almost like they all read from the same playbook to some degree. Manny Fresh with the $20 super chat says, if natural law leads to the idea that men and women should have equality under the law, then would you say all those who believe in natural law are feminists? I think rejection of patriarchy theory is enough. That's an interesting thought.
Well, I don't believe in natural law, and that's a belief of the Catholics, not a belief of the Orthodox. We don't believe in natural law. Natural law is an idea that order itself gives you an ought, right?
Okay.
So the order of things in themselves gives them an ontology, and to take away the order of the thing itself is in and of itself in some way sinful or bad. So the Orthodox don't have that viewpoint. I don't even think natural law is a thing. I think that under scrutiny, the position of natural law folds. Now, when you say if natural law leads to the idea that men and women have equality under the law, I would say that if natural law was true, my argument for it would be that no, natural law does not lead to equality. Natural law seems to lead towards more of a might makes right scenario. That seems to be what the natural order of things is, not a natural order of equality. Natural law instead would seem to resist that.
Okay. All right. Very good. I'm not going to take the bait here. Truff TV says, Donovan, have you any disagreements with Andrew or questions? Nice try. Nice try. I am not taking the bait. Andrew's black ex-wife with the $10 super chat says, my concern is if enough.
Did you see that picture of Precious? It's a picture of Precious,
yes,
bro.
Is absolutely. That is a picture of Precious. Andrew, why? Now this is your ex-wife. What happened? Like, what happened in the marriage, man? Like, what are we doing? You left this, big, beautiful black woman. What happened,
man? What's that?
No, I was trying to
leave my
my
fictitious black ex-wife alone.
Yep, sorry about that. Andrew's black ex-wife says, my concern is if enough future moms do quote content, their offspring won't be made fun of. As weird as that sounds, it won't be stigmatized. Quote, everyone's mom does it.
So the thing is that actually is not how stigmatization often works. Like even if you have enough people involved in bad behavior, you would just create social status groups of the people whose moms weren't involved, right?
Right. Oh,
so now you'd have a minority of people who would consider themselves to have a much higher social status than everybody else. Like it would still be counterintuitive. So,
dude, send the asteroid, Jesus Christ. Andrew's black ex-wife, boy, I tell you what, your ex-wife seems to really still have a thing for you. Says, I knew that lady was a pagan. She worshipped Pan. She did sacrifices in the woods without clothes and put blood on herself. Pagans freak me out.
Yes, they do.
Drunk Batman with the $5 super chat says, shit. Daddy Dame with a $50 super chat says, hitting the Andrew slot machine. Here's another $50. I'm addicted now. Andrew, could you elaborate a bit on when you changed a girl's mind on whatever podcast? Did she come to you after the show? Did you and your wife take her under your wing?
Well, there's been instances of that, but not taking them under our wing, but I've gotten many DMs from many of the women who come off the show. Do you remember there was a recent one who DM'd me actually and apologized and said that she listened to some more of what I said and thought that I was correct. Do you remember that heavy set flight attendant who started crying her eyes out, and she brought in all of her arguments and shit.
Yes.
Yeah, she DM'd me recently. Now by recent I mean like maybe a couple months ago. I'd have to pull it up, but and she was like, "Hey, I don't have." She's like, "No, like, she kind of apologized. I don't remember exactly verbatim, but it was something along those lines." Yeah.
Wow. Okay, man, you really do have your black belt in this stuff. Sam Stark with a $20 super chat says, I have really enjoyed the value that you both have given selflessly to us all. Well, I don't know about my end. Says, I've lived for so long without an accountable sounding board. Having my eyes open 5 years ago, and I live it forward. Great to see you both live. Absolutely. Here's my last question for you. This comes from Discord from Dr. B84. This is a very good question. He says, how do you raise your daughters not to fall into the feminism trap and be with degenerate dudes who will never give them a future?
Well, I mean, that's $1 million question, right? So it's not always possible, especially if you have a big family. So I remember I was talking with a priest, an Orthodox priest, and he was like, the clergy are always the most under demonic attack, right?
Yeah.
And you'll see that members of clergy have large families. Almost every single time one of them will fall over to something like this. You know what I mean? At least one. And they have to kind of deal with that in a social setting, the shame, all of that. You know what I mean? But their attempt is to just kind of never give up, even if they create these various boundaries and things like this. There's no guarantee that you'll be able to fully stop it, right? But I think that the chances that you can stop it for the most part with most of your children is pretty high. And so I wouldn't get discouraged because you do everything right and you have one kid who's just a shithead no matter what. Like, that's going to happen.
That is going to happen.
That's going to happen. Like, and there's only so much you can do about it. But ultimately, you keep on the path and the narrow path. And here's the nice thing, right? Oftentimes the wayward kids come home. So.
Yeah, that's very true. You know, the prodigal son. There's actually a new show coming out, I think, with Tim Allen and Kat Dennings that I guess addresses that to a degree. Who knows? To Nubble, it says, shout out to Rachel Wilson's Occult Feminism, The Secret History of Women's Liberation. Buy it so Andrew can buy more smokes and booze. Absolutely.
Well, it's my gun fund.
Yeah. Oh my God. Devin she had a question for you. Devin wanted you to know that she loves Rachel. She loves he gets the big piece of chicken. He gets the big piece of chicken.
The big piece of chicken.
That's her favorite. Yeah. All right, Andrew. I think that is. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. We still got super chats coming in. Doge with the $5 super chat says, just showing love. Donovan is one of the first dudes I watched when getting into the RP. By the way, I blame blue pill men for why things are the way they are today. I guess I'll ask you one last question. And I apologize for, keeping you longer than I wanted to. I know you're probably a busy guy. How do you think the Manosphere can improve?
Well, this is actually a more loaded question than you think.
Oh,
which aspects of it? Oh
my God. You know what? How is it possible for the Manosphere to, shake the I don't want to say creepy reputation, but shake the PUA and the degeneracy reputation? Because admittedly, Andrew, I was all in for the degeneracy. I've done it before. I preach that you should do it. Obviously, I have a much different stance now that I'm in a long-term, relationship of consequence with a woman that I both trust and love. But how do we shake that stigma of, well, the Manosphere just wants to use women?
Have you ever heard this phrase? Let all which was done for evil now be used for good, or all that was used for evil now be used for good.
Sure have, yeah.
So the thing is like, you can still take all of these forms and use them for good. You do have to purge out the degenerate element because it's a poison, right? And the way that you can do that is you can continuously point to the poison and say, no, this is poison. This is not part of what we are, what we represent. It has nothing to do with any of this. However, there is no such unity inside of what you call the Manosphere. When you're referencing the Manosphere, what you're talking about is a loose confederation of streamers and opinion junkies and some writers and various things like this who are essentially just opinion piece columnists at the end of the day, or kind of low-level entertainers, or they are trying to just give out kind of like base-level information to people. So it's a loose confederation more than it is a union. It's not really a union. And so because of that, it doesn't really have the collective power that you might see in actual political groups where they can purge out the things they don't like, right? Okay, this part of our message, we don't like this, you're purged, you're gone. There's distance created, things like this. Because the manosphere itself does not exist as a whole, it does not exist as a unity. It's next to impossible to do. And so because it's a phrase, it's not pointing to anything tangible. It's a phrase which is just pointing to, it's a heuristic ultimately. It's like when somebody says a white guy southbound, right?
Yeah.
He's heading southbound, approximately 6'2".
Right.
So that's a heuristic. He's not saying Irish English guy, right? He's heading southbound, because the heuristic bypasses the necessity for you to give a deeper descriptor. And so the heuristic manosphere, right? The descriptor there is just taking this loose confederation and putting it all under one flagship to give somebody a vague idea of what we're talking about.
Okay.
Men-related topics and issues. Men-related topic and issues, that's manosphere. Okay. And so because that's such a loose confederation, and by the way, tons of people inside of the quote manosphere fucking hate each other.
Yes,
they hate each other. So there's not exactly, when you talk about improvement, that's why I said this is kind of a loaded question, because it's which section, which kind of creator groups, which types of things. But yeah, I do think that ultimately more of a unionization rather than a confederation and more of a purge is going to at some point be in order. But in some ways, the quote manosphere, I keep saying quote manosphere, right? Just because, just to point out that it's a heuristic.
Yeah.
But in many ways, it's its own worst enemy, because so many of the manosphere creators talk about alpha hierarchy, using this kind of outdated forms of an alpha wolf with very discredited research to point out alpha hierarchies in general. Well, then that means everyone wants to be the alpha. And so if everybody wants to be the alpha,
then nobody can be alpha.
Then who can be in charge?
Right. No, that makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense, man. I like the description of, I liked your description that we're all just kind of, it's unregulated. You know, we try not to be quote unquote gatekeepers, but there are a lot of creators out there who claim that they're Manosphere, Red Pill, that really kind of give us a bad name. Thumper with the $5 super chat says, Andrew, I'm a bit new to the whatever/crucible. What episode was your debut on whatever? I guess he wants to know what was your first whatever podcast. I
don't remember.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't think anybody remembers that. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe go check the page. Last super chat I'm gonna read, guys. $10 super chat from James S says, Andrew's skankerisms. It's probably the first time they're
skanksercisms. Skanksercisms.
Oh. Oh my God! He says on Andrew's sorry, it is probably the first time the world has been challenged, and why they actually think about it, and they say shit. That makes perfect sense. Yeah, some of these bitches out here absolutely need skanksercisms. Listen, Andrew, I can't tell you, man. This has been. Thank you so much for coming on here, man. I think we're all a little bit smarter today. And I got to be honest with you, I learned a lot today. I really, really did. And you might not like to hear this, but you actually maybe indirectly gave me some pretty good advice, right? But you guys know how that goes. Listen, you are welcome on the pod anytime. And who knows? Maybe if I decide to start getting into debates, maybe I'll spar with you.
Are you familiar with the concept of a favor for a favor?
Oh yeah, of course. Quid pro quo.
Okay, so I popped on your stream, right?
Yeah.
Gave you a favor. Will you do me one?
Absolutely, 100%. Absolutely.
We go back to church for a month.
You know what? I'll do that.
All right, deal.
I will do that. I've been. I'm sorry, man. It's whew. Sorry about that. It's just when it comes to like God and religion, it's just yeah, I'll do it. I'll go to church for
30 days. 4 times.
days.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. 4 times.
No. I'm with it, man.
Catholic. Go to the Catholic Church.
Yeah, I'll do it.
I'll
absolutely do that. Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, then this time was not wasted by me.
No, absolutely, man. Absolutely, man. And I appreciate you. I appreciate the way you explain things. I really, really do. There's a lot of, there's a lot of shit that I gotta deal with. And I think that could be the solution. So thank you very much for that. And listen, come on anytime. And listen, if Devin, my wife, she talks a lot about how it's very, very difficult to become friends with women who are like-minded. So if Rachel ever gets lonely, tell her to text Devin, and they can talk shit about all of the friends they've lost because of the views they have in life.
Well, that's great, man. I appreciate it very much. And you have yourself a good day.
You too, my friend. Take care.
All right. You too.